My only reward for fixing that alien ship was the truth. And this truth, what a being from another world showed me about the man on the cross, is the key to a story you were never supposed to hear. Forget religion. Forget Sunday school lessons. What I'm talking about is a connection that was hidden in plain sight, a missing piece that makes every part of your life snap into place. But I need to warn you. This information has a price. It will shine a light on wounds you've carried for years, but it may also cast shadows in places you never expected. If you're ready to question what you've always been told is absolute, turn on notifications now. Because what Frank Morrison witnessed out there in the stillness of rural Montana wasn't the end of his suffering, it was the beginning of a revelation buried for 2,000 years. A truth frozen in time, waiting for someone broken enough, desperate enough, aligned enough to see it. So let me take you back to where it began. I repaired a stranded craft from another world, and what its occupant revealed about Jesus will overturn everything you think you know. I'm not talking about doctrine. I'm not talking about faith as you've been taught it. I'm talking about something hidden so deeply it rewires everything once you understand it. But hear me clearly, once this truth enters your mind, you can't unknow it. You can't return to the version of yourself that believed things were simple. If you're ready to hear what no church will ever preach, subscribe, activate the bell, and prepare yourself. Because what happened to Frank Morrison in that Montana field will change the way you see the world, and the divine, forever. Morning in rural New Mexico rarely offers surprises. It brings the same pale sunlight sliding across the trailer walls, the same creaking of the water heater struggling against age, the same dull ache in Eli Turner's chest as he pushes himself upright. The world outside his window stretches wide and empty, but for him, it feels smaller every year. Eli's days always begin with ritual. Folgers brewing in a chipped mug, 2 slices of toast if the bread hasn't gone stale, a slow shuffle to the kitchen window to check whether the wind has torn the screen door loose again. His body moves from memory, not motivation. There is no urgency left in a life shaped by loss. Just tasks. Quiet ones. The stack of medical bills on the table grows taller with every sunrise. The envelopes change colors. White, yellow, soft orange, but the message never does. Past due. Final notice. Intent to collect. He turns each one face down, pretending that a flipped envelope carries less weight. His wife's treatments drained everything. Savings, credit, hope. What it didn't take, time finished off. Outside, his old F-150 waits like a tired companion. The truck coughs awake, rattles like a creature held together by stubbornness, then eases onto the county road. Eli checks the mailbox as he always does. Empty hope, empty metal. This is his world now, wide land, narrow life. A daughter in Phoenix who hasn't called in months. A church he stopped attending after faith cracked under pressure. A home that feels more like a waiting room than a refuge. Every choice he makes is about survival, not belief. And yet, in all this heaviness, nothing feels resolved. His grief is unfinished. His loneliness is ongoing. His doubts hover like dust in the sunlight, always present, never addressed. Every mile he drives across this desert carries the same quiet truth. He is running out of time, money, and reasons to keep asking for help. The land around him stretches silent and gold beneath the rising sun. But beneath that silence, something else has begun. Something faint. Something distant. A low vibration drifts across the desert floor, just soft enough to dismiss, and just strange enough that the hairs on his arms begin to rise. A distant hum intrudes on the stillness. Years before the desert began whispering to him, Eli Turner stood at the edge of a sterile hospital bed, watching the last person who made his life feel whole fade away one breath at a time. He had prayed then, not casually, not out of habit, but with the desperation of a man who believed something divine owed him an answer. He had filled that room with every scripture he remembered, every plea he could form, every bargain he swore he would keep. None of it mattered. Not the whispered promises. Not the trembling hands. Not the decades of faith poured into every Sunday morning. When his wife's final breath escaped, something inside him collapsed with it. A part of him that had survived childhood poverty, factory layoffs, and the quiet punishments of hardship finally fractured. The God he had trusted since childhood felt suddenly distant, unreachable, uninterested in mercy. In the days that followed, Eli kept praying anyway. Not out of hope, but out of old reflex, the way a person flicks a light switch in a house they know has lost power. Until one night in his darkened living room, surrounded by casserole dishes and silence, the truth settled over him. He'd been talking to someone who was no longer listening. He stopped praying that night. Stopped expecting meaning. Stopped believing anything beyond what he could touch with his hands. but endings have a way of leaving marks. And in the quiet months that followed, a strange pattern emerged. A time. A number. A signal he couldn't explain. Every night at the edge of sleep, the same digits glowed in the darkness of his room. 333. At first he ignored it. Then he feared it. Then he wondered if it was following him. The number begins appearing in ways he cannot explain. Night falls without ceremony, slipping across the desert in a slow descent that feels heavier than usual. Eli settles into the familiar hum of his lonely property, unaware that something in the atmosphere has begun to shift. The air grows thick, pressing against the windows as if testing the strength of the trailer's thin walls. Storms are common in late August, but this one builds in a way that feels orchestrated rather than natural. Before the first drop of rain lands, the vibration begins. A tremor, too low for sound, spreads through the floorboards. It crawls up the legs of the kitchen table, ripples through the old vinyl flooring, and reaches Eli's chest before he can rationalize it. His breath catches as the lights flicker once, then stabilize. Outside, the wind stops entirely. Then the desert ignites. A blue-white pulse bursts across the horizon, bright enough to bleach the sky in one violent flash. It doesn't move like lightning. It expands, blooming outward in a perfect sphere that swells silently over the back 40 like a living thing. The light bends around the landscape, washing over the mesquite trees, illuminating the rusted tractor parts scattered near the pasture. The hum deepens into a resonant thrum, thick enough to feel in the teeth. Eli grips the edge of his counter as the windows begin to vibrate. For a moment, the entire world seems suspended inside that glow, caught between one reality and the next. Then the vibration shifts. It tightens. Focuses. Like something unseen is searching through the dark. And just when the force feels unbearable, the light snaps off. Total darkness. Total stillness. A silence so absolute it feels engineered, as though the storm itself has been erased from the world. The unnatural quiet hangs in the air, waiting for interpretation. Dawn crawls across the desert with a washed-out palette, but the calm it brings feels too deliberate, too precise. Eli steps outside expecting to see the aftermath of a storm. Torn branches, puddles, wind-blown debris. Instead, the land looks untouched. Not a twig out of place. Not a footprint disturbed. But something draws him toward the south pasture. A faint shimmer. A glint that doesn't belong in sand or dry brush. When he crests the small rise overlooking the back 40, the breath leaves him. A perfect circle, 30 feet across, smooth as polished marble, lies pressed into the earth. The surface looks like glass, but not the kind made by heat or impact. It resembles frozen water, rippled with patterns that catch the early sun in fractured rainbows. Eli crouches beside it. The air above the circle feels different, charged but cool. He presses his hand to the surface, expecting warmth. Instead, a cold shock travels up his arm. Nothing about it makes sense. No scorch marks. No debris. No tracks leading to or from it. As an electrician, he recognizes the signature of energy discharge, but this is something beyond any circuit, arc, or conduit he has ever seen. When he stands again, something flickers at his wrist. His watch. The digital display blurs, then sharpens into 3 unmistakable numbers. 333. The moment he blinks, the display resets itself to the correct time, as if the glitch never happened. But the echo of that number lingers, hovering over the glassy disk, pulsing through his mind with unnerving clarity. Nothing about this patch of earth follows the rules anymore. The number fades from his watch, but not from his thoughts. Standing over the impossible circle, Eli feels a truth he has avoided for years. Whatever happened last night wasn't meant for casual understanding. Every instinct he has built through hardship and loss screams for him to seek help, but help comes with consequences. In a place like rural New Mexico, strange claims travel faster than dust across the county line. He imagines the sheriff's truck pulling into his driveway, deputies exchanging looks, someone whispering that Eli finally cracked under the pressure of loneliness. He sees the church prayer chain lighting up with quiet judgment. He thinks of government agencies with long acronyms, black vehicles, and questions designed to corner a man until he doubts his own sanity. There is no version of this discovery that leaves his life intact. The desert around him feels suddenly larger, emptier, as if it's listening. Even Buddy, his old healer, hangs back with cautious steps, ears pinned flat. Eli runs a hand over his jaw, trying to swallow the rising dread. Walking away feels dangerous. Reporting it feels worse. Staying silent feels impossible. The circle glints behind him, reflecting the first heat of morning. Whatever happened out here has not finished unfolding. That night, as the sun sinks and shadows reclaim the barn, the decision is made for him. A crash splits the quiet, metal against concrete, rattling the night with violent force. Something inside the barn has moved. Eli freezes at the edge of the porch, the echo of the crash still vibrating through the desert air. The barn stands in the half-light, its silhouette warped by the last amber streaks of sunset. Nothing on his land should be moving. Nothing should be inside that barn except old tools, rusted equipment, and the skeleton of his past work. But the sound came from deep within it, unmistakable and heavy. He retrieves the rifle he keeps behind the door, not out of confidence but necessity. Out here, hesitation can get a man killed. The flashlight feels small in his grip as he approaches the barn, each step sinking into dirt that suddenly seems too soft, too quiet. The wind refuses to move. Even the dogs in distant ranch houses remain silent. When he reaches the sliding door, a breath of air escapes from the crack, cold, unnatural, threaded with something metallic. He slides the door open just enough to slip inside. The temperature drops instantly. The familiar scent of oil and dust is gone, replaced by a sterile chill that stings the lungs. His beam of light cuts across warped angles that defy the barn's architecture. The wooden walls ripple with shallow curves, bent inward as though reality has softened under pressure. Shapes that should be straight bend with impossible geometry. Then he sees it. A structure fused into the back wall, half materialized, half melted into the support beams. Smooth metal that reflects no light. Surfaces that shift when stared at too long. A design that belongs to no aircraft built on Earth. The craft pulses faintly as if breathing. At the base of this impossible intrusion lies a figure slumped against his dented red toolbox. Long limbs, narrow torso, skin the color of ash touched with faint luminescence. Its form trembles with each slow, unsteady movement. Not dead. Not alive in any recognizable way. Wounded. The rifle lowers, unbidden. Something inside him understands instinctively, this being did not break into his barn. It crashed into his reality. As he steps closer, the cold intensifies, biting through denim and flannel. Dust curls upward in strange spirals as if caught in invisible currents. The world narrows to the creature's stillness, its breath shallow and strained. Then the air thickens. A pressure builds behind his eyes. And without warning, something speaks to him, not through sound but thought. It knows his name. A voice forms inside his mind, calling him directly. The voice doesn't arrive as sound. It arrives as pressure, a tightening behind Eli's eyes, a soft distortion of thought, like someone reaching into a locked room inside his mind and turning on a light he never knew was there. His breath stalls as the presence forms itself with startling precision, bypassing language and striking directly at identity. It knows him. Not vaguely, not by accident. By name. A flood of images surges through him before he can brace himself. Snatches of memories ripple across his consciousness. The hiss of welding torches from his factory days, the feel of copper wire coiling through his fingers, the hum of transformers in summer heat. His life is laid out in disjointed sensations, electrically charged, vivid, invasive. He staggers under the weight of it, gripping the edge of the workbench to stay upright. Instinct screams at him to run. To get out before this thing inside his barn pries deeper. But intertwined with the panic is an unexpected countercurrent. A strange pull born not from bravery but from the creature's fragility. Its labored movements, its dimming glow, its posture slumped in unmistakable distress. Whatever it is not hunting him. It is barely holding itself together. The voice presses gently again, weaving through the edges of his fear with disarming clarity. It understands his skills. It recognizes the patterns of his labor, the quiet competence he carried through decades of wiring, fixing, repairing. And in that recognition lies something unsettling: purpose. A cold shiver crawls up his spine as the mental presence deepens, no longer unfamiliar but strangely familiar, as if it has walked the halls of his memory long before this moment. Then the revelation strikes with undeniable force. It has been watching him since childhood. The entity reveals it has observed him from the very beginning. What follows isn't a thought, it's an unfolding. A widening of the mind that feels both unnatural and impossibly ancient. Eli senses the being drawing back the veil of its own existence, not through words but through impressions layered with staggering scale. He's lifted into a vantage point that dwarfs human understanding, suspended in a perspective that stretches across epochs. The creature's species does not build empires or alter civilizations. It witnesses them. It moves along the fault lines of spiritual evolution, mapping the moments when consciousness stirs, falters, or transforms. They do not touch the trajectory of worlds. They document the reasons those worlds change. Through this lens, Earth is not a random stop. It is a significant fracture point. A planet defined not by its size, but by the volatility of its inner life. The way faith rises and falls like a tide, the way belief collides with ambition, the way human hearts burn with questions that never find rest. The being has stood at the perimeter of many civilizations, but humanity, it suggests, is one of the few that clings to the possibility of a divine presence even in despair. Eli feels the timeline expand beneath him. Ancient desert markets, forgotten temples, early pilgrims staring at stars without names. The creature's presence hovers above each moment, silent, steady, always watching, never intervening. Their purpose is to bear witness to inflection points, the brief seconds in history where something sacred transforms into something new. Across millennia, Earth has produced only a handful of such moments, and one of them changed the universe itself. A shift in the being's projection pulls Eli downward, narrowing the vastness into a single image taking shape through haze and sand. A hill emerges, stark, weathered, heavy with significance. A place he's only heard described in sermons and scripture. The being shows him the first glimpse of an ancient hill. The world around Eli dissolves into a cascade of color and shadow as the being's memory locks onto a moment older than every story ever preached. The desert barn fades. The modern world disappears. In its place rises a hill under a bruised sky, trembling with a tension that sinks instantly into Eli's chest. He isn't observing it, he is standing in it, pulled straight into the raw imprint left by a cosmic witness. Golgotha is not serene as paintings suggest. It is chaotic. The air tastes of sand and iron. The crowd churns with grief, fear, and something darker, the collective fracture of belief. Eli senses the creature's vantage point, not as a participant, but as a lens capturing the spiritual violence unfolding before it. The sky darkens unnaturally, as if creation itself recoils from the scene. The ground vibrates with slow, pulsing waves that radiate from the center cross, patterns of energy no human eye could have detected. They ripple outward through stone and blood and air, each pulse carrying a resonance that feels like both destruction and awakening. Eli sees the crucifixion not as metaphor, but as unfiltered truth. Every anguished breath, every tremor of the earth, every desperate heartbeat around him. The man at the center radiates a force so intense it bends the atmosphere. Not light, not sound, but something deeper, a frequency that shakes the boundaries between the physical and the eternal. The crowd's cries blur into a single note of despair. The sky cracks with thunder that doesn't come from clouds. Eli feels warmth and cold at the same time, as if the universe is tearing open and restitching itself around that moment. He realizes this memory is not symbolic. It is physics, written in suffering and energy. And just when he thinks he understands the enormity of what he's witnessing, something changes. The pulses shift. Their pattern sharpens. A hidden layer reveals itself, unseen, unrecorded, unspoken in any scripture. From the depths of the being's memory, a truth forms with devastating clarity. Humanity learned only a fraction of what happened on that hill. The entity whispers that the full story was never told. The vision dissolves slowly, leaving Eli suspended between awe and devastation. The weight of Golgotha lingers in his chest, not as mythology but as a force that reshaped existence. As the intensity fades, another presence pushes gently into his awareness, redirecting him away from the past and toward the wound he never let heal. The creature brings him to the threshold of his deepest question: why the heavens were silent when he begged for his wife's life. Not with cruelty, not with indifference, but with the precision of someone showing the mechanics inside a broken clock. Prayer, in the creature's understanding, is not a plea spoken into space. It is an alignment, a resonance of consciousness that interacts with reality on levels untouched by language or desperation. Eli feels this explanation not as philosophy but as sensation, a soft current moving through the marrow of his bones, showing how intention shapes energy long before words are spoken. Linda's final days unfold before him again, but differently this time. He sees the network of quiet forces guiding her, subtle threads of awareness he never perceived. Not a denial of his prayers, but a convergence of paths leading her toward a transition he cannot yet fully grasp. Her suffering wasn't ignored. Her departure wasn't abandonment. It was a shift into a form of existence that still touches his life in ways he hasn't recognized. The understanding crashes through him with painful clarity. All the years he spent believing he'd been forsaken were built on an assumption the universe never supported. He had interpreted silence as rejection, when it had been transformation. But the revelation carries weight. This knowledge doesn't soothe. It fractures. It exposes foundations Eli didn't know he still relied on. And as he tries to process the enormity of what he's been shown, the being sends a final ripple of meaning through his mind, gentle but edged with warning. This truth is not free. The being cautions him that understanding comes with a cost. The creature's weakened glow exposes the full horror of what happened to its vessel. The barn is no longer a simple structure of metal and wood. It has become an unwilling host to something far beyond human design. Panels of impossibly smooth alloy have fused seamlessly into warped beams, as if the ship melted through the physical world and froze mid-transition. Edges that should cut cast no shadow. Curves that should reflect light swallow it instead. Eli studies the structure with the practiced eye of a man who has spent his life repairing things no one else could fix. The disruption isn't random. It follows a pattern, a collapse of some kind of energy route, a broken circuit that crosses dimensions rather than wires. Still, the damage is unmistakable. A conduit, running like a luminous vein through the belly of the craft, flickers in and out of existence. Each pulse dims the creature slumped beside it. For the first time, Eli understands why the being reached for him. The creature's survival depends on restoring a flow of power that only someone who comprehends currents, grounding, and alignment could attempt. Not an engineer from a lab. Not a scientist with theories. A practical man. Someone who can feel when a system is misaligned just by listening to its tremor. Metal sizzles softly along the seam where barn wall meets otherworldly hull. The entire structure hums with unstable frequency, vibrating through the dirt floor and into Eli's shoes. It's failing. Slowly but inevitably. Then a sharp crackle cuts through the air. The creature lifts its head. A wave of dread floods Eli before he understands why. Something has detected the rupture. Something scanning the desert from far beyond his land. Government detection systems are already searching for the anomaly. The creature's presence expands inside Eli's mind, not aggressive but urgent. The fractured vessel pulses with diminishing light, each flicker revealing how little time remains. In that cold barn, the truth settles between them. Survival is a shared burden now. One cannot leave without the other. The being's consciousness unfurls a stark proposal. It cannot repair the conduit alone. Its form is weakened, its energy unstable. But Eli, a man who has spent decades coaxing life back into failing systems, carries an understanding that transcends species. Conductivity, resistance, flow. On a cosmic scale, the same laws apply. What differs is magnitude. In exchange for his help, the creature opens a door Eli never imagined existed. Access to its complete memory field. Not visions. Not metaphors. Direct immersion. The entire chronology of events it has witnessed across time, including the unfiltered truth of the crucifixion, and the final transition of Linda's consciousness before she slipped from her body. Nothing withheld. Nothing softened. Only raw, unaltered truth. For 3 days Eli would work to rebuild the conduit. And for 3 days the being would reveal what humanity has grasped only in fragments. Moments so foundational they shaped civilizations, yet remained beyond comprehension. But there is a cost beneath the offer. A shadow forming behind the promise. If Eli accepts, he becomes part of something he can't walk away from. Knowledge can't be undone. Faith doesn't return to its original shape once it's broken open. And hovering at the edges of this choice is another threat. Engines in the sky, surveillance grids expanding across the desert, agencies scanning for anomalies in the electromagnetic field. If they arrive first, the creature will be destroyed. And Eli will vanish with it, erased, silenced, forgotten. 3 days. One impossible repair. One truth that could shatter everything. If the government gets there first, neither of them will survive. Before the repairs begin, the creature imparts a truth that shakes Eli more than the visions of Golgotha. Prayer as he had practiced it was sound. Voice. Emotion spilled into the air. But the being shows him something else, something he feels rather than hears. A fine vibration beneath thought, a subtle alignment of intention with unseen structure. A frequency produced not by words but by coherence. Eli senses the lesson rather than learns it. A gentle pull in the center of his chest, the soft expansion of awareness that lifts him above fear for a heartbeat. It isn't mystical, it's mechanical. Attuning. A resonance between consciousness and the fabric of reality. The creature guides him toward a demonstration. A small object rests on the workbench, a stray washer from his toolbox. It sits lifeless, cold, ordinary. The being nudges Eli's awareness, aligning his intention with an invisible current drifting through the barn. For a moment nothing happens. Then the washer trembles. Not from telekinesis. Not from force. From resonance. The realization hits him hard. This is what his prayers had missed. Not sincerity. Not desperation. Alignment. The washer lifts half an inch before settling back into place, leaving Eli trembling with a mixture of awe and regret. All those nights he had begged the heavens for rescue, believing volume equaled power. All those hours spent pleading instead of aligning. As he tries to steady his breath, something catches his eye. The digital clock on the wall flickers. A box of screws shifts slightly. A receipt in his pocket crinkles with static. The same sequence repeats again and again in unexpected places. On surfaces, reflections, patterns he can't unsee. 3:33. Not a coincidence. Not a glitch. A signal. The number begins to appear everywhere, becoming a key he cannot ignore. With Eli's mind now tuned to this strange frequency, the creature opens another layer of its memory. This one is quieter. More intimate. Less like a vision and more like standing in the breath between worlds. Eli feels the past rise around him as the being reveals teachings recorded not in ink, but in perception. Moments lost to language, fragmented by translation, diluted by centuries of interpretation. He sees a teacher walking dusty paths, speaking in rhythms that blend metaphor with mechanism. Teachings that were never meant to be confined to doctrine. Lessons about consciousness as creation, intention as structure, compassion as an energetic force that alters the physical world. Not miracles. Not magic. Laws of existence demonstrated through living example. The creature reveals concepts stripped from scripture over time. Layers of meaning flattened by political agendas, cultural fears, and the limitations of early translators. Eli senses the weight of what was removed. Teachings about the architecture of the soul, the mechanics of healing, the alignment of will with divine resonance. Some messages were softened. Some obscured. Some buried entirely. As the revelation unfolds, Eli feels something crack open inside him. Not faith returning, but understanding forming where confusion once lived. His grief takes on new shape. His doubts rearrange themselves. His anger loses its anchor. He realizes the foundation of his belief was built on fragments, not the whole structure. What he rejected wasn't the truth, it was the incomplete version of it. The barn seems to expand around him, walls bending outward with each new realization. The air grows warmer. The ship pulses with faint recognition, sensing the shift in his awareness. And in that expanding clarity, a sobering thought takes hold. This is real. Then everything he built his life on was only the beginning. Eli realizes his entire spiritual foundation was incomplete, and that the missing pieces change everything. The barn fades again, this time not into place or memory, but into the underlying structure of reality itself. The creature draws Eli's awareness beyond the image of the crucifixion and into the ripple that followed. A shockwave of consciousness expanding outward through time and matter. It is not an echo. It is an imprint. A permanent alteration in the fabric of existence, like a stone dropped into a cosmic ocean whose waves never stopped moving. Light bends differently around that moment. Time folds around it like cloth tugged by invisible hands. Even the vacuum between stars holds traces of the event. Eli senses it all at once. The agony, the surrender, the release, each part generating a pattern that radiates through the universe like concentric rings of color. They pass through galaxies, brush the edges of nebulae, and strike every living soul with subtle force. Not as judgment. Not as doctrine. As recalibration. For the first time, Eli understands why suffering feels like pressure and relief feels like expansion. His own grief, his unanswered prayers, his collapse of faith, each moment corresponded to the same cosmic pattern the crucifixion unleashed. Pain wasn't punishment. Pain was resonance. A point of contact between human fragility and something endlessly larger. He sees Linda again, not in her hospital bed, but in the luminous trail her final breath created. A thread connecting her to the same waves that reshaped creation 2,000 years ago. Her transition wasn't disappearance. It was assimilation into the same pattern that held the universe up. The realization lands with breathtaking weight. His suffering wasn't a detour. It was a participation. But before he can grasp the full meaning, the barn trembles. The ship dims. The creature's outline flickers. Outside, the air compresses sharply, as if something massive has entered the desert sky. The entity weakens as atmospheric pressure shifts with alarming force. The desert, once silent and open, begins to tighten like a noose. A low vibration rolls across the basin. mechanical this time, not celestial. Eli steps to the barn doorway, scanning the horizon. What he sees sends a chill down his spine. A dark shape glides across the sky, its outline sharp against the fading light. Not a commercial plane. Not a weather drone. Its movement is too calculated, too steady, as if it's following coordinates rather than air currents. It sweeps the landscape with an invisible scan, repeating slow arcs over the back 40. Then headlights appear on the distant highway. One pair. Then another. Then a convoy. Black SUVs, government plate silhouettes barely visible in the dust. They move with synchronized precision down State Route 1, miles away yet unmistakably searching. A sweep pattern. Expanding outward. Closing gaps. The creature inside the barn contracts its presence, its fear bleeding through Eli's mind in faint, trembling pulses. The signal from the ruptured craft has spread farther than expected. Agencies are tracing anomalies in the electromagnetic field, converging on this desert like predators sensing wounded prey. Eli steps back from the door, pulse racing. The urgency he once felt as personal now becomes existential. The countdown has shifted. They are no longer alone in the night. And just as he reaches for the workbench, the landline on the wall rings once, a single, sharp chime. Then it dies. The phone falls silent mid-ring as if someone cut the connection from outside. Night bleeds into the barn while Eli transforms it into a sanctuary of impossible purpose. Tools scatter across the concrete floor. DeWalt drill, voltage tester, coils of copper wire gleaming like veins under the flickering fluorescent lights. The creature's consciousness hovers beside him, faint but precise, guiding him through a language of currents no human textbook ever captured. The conduit fractured during the ship's collapse stretches before him like an exposed artery, pulsing weakly. Its structure shifts between physical and intangible states, requiring Eli to trust instincts shaped by decades of fixing things that had no right to work again. He threads copper wire through the glowing lattice, stabilizing it where the alien alloy wavers between dimensions. Every adjustment sends a vibration up his arm. Every connection creates a burst of light that threatens to overwhelm his vision. Sweat collects in the lines of his face as he drills into material that behaves like both steel and energy. He improvises binding points with clamps and spare components from his toolbox, building a bridge between human mechanics and otherworldly circuitry. The barn hums like a tuning chamber as the alignment strengthens. Dust rises in thin spirals from the floor, pulled upward by unseen currents. The ship responds, expanding and contracting like a lung. Eli feels the structure resonate under his boots, syncing with the beat of something ancient. But the process is brutal. The conduit thrashes when misaligned, forcing him to recalibrate under pressure he's never known. His hands tremble. His breath shortens. Yet he keeps going, driven by a purpose he no longer questions. Then one connection snaps into place with too much force. A blast of white radiance erupts from the conduit, throwing Eli backward. His vision fractures. The world spins. Heat pulses through the barn like a shockwave. He hits the ground hard enough to taste blood. The misaligned surge nearly knocks him unconscious, and the conduit still isn't stable. As the conduit steadies to a faint, rhythmic pulse, the creature's presence gathers in Eli's mind with renewed clarity. Its energy is weak but focused. A final truth rises from the depths of its memory, shaped to reach him in a way words never could. Images unfold, not of the cosmos this time but of Eli himself. A boy lying on the hood of a rusted car, mapping constellations with his finger. A teenager fixing wiring in his family's garage long before he understood why it made him feel grounded. A man kneeling beside a failing generator at the Ford plant, solving a puzzle that stumped engineers twice his age. A husband praying in a hospital chapel, begging for answers the universe had not yet revealed. A lifetime of currents. A lifetime of seeking connection. A lifetime of stitching broken things back together. The creature had watched these moments not as coincidence but as alignment. The same resonance that allowed Eli to repair circuits allowed him to carry questions larger than his own suffering. He had always been bridging worlds, between function and failure, faith and doubt, longing and loss. Now he bridges this one. Eli feels the truth settle into him like a key turning in a lock. Helping the creature isn't an accident. It's the culmination of his entire existence. Every heartbreak, every prayer, every quiet act of repair leading him to this point. The realization sweeps through him with both dread and clarity. Because saving the entity is saving the part of himself he thought died with Linda. Eli realizes this mission isn't just survival, it's redemption he never expected to find. The conduit's pulse stabilizes into a steady rhythm, and for the first time the ship breathes as a single coherent structure. The barn around Eli softens, its familiar edges dissolving into a haze of light and shadow. The entity gathers the last of its strength and opens a memory with no earthly counterpart, a record not stored in history, but imprinted into the foundation of creation itself. The crucifixion rises again, but not as vision or symbol. This time Eli sees its inner architecture. Energy patterns radiate outward from the central figure, forming spirals that twist through the air like threads of living fire. Each pulse interacts with the environment, bending light, altering time, distorting gravity in faint but measurable ways. The universe does not witness the event passively, it responds. The atmosphere thickens under the weight of meaning. Even the stones at the base of the hill vibrate in resonance, as if aware of what is unfolding above them. Eli watches the man on the cross exhale with impossible clarity. He sees the exact instant when consciousness breaks free from form, expanding outward in a wave that sweeps across continents and centuries. Human eyes recorded only agony. But the entity reveals the undercurrent, a cosmic recalibration encoded into every breath that followed. The sky darkens not out of sadness, but because the universe is holding still, allowing the transformation to complete itself. Eli feels the resonance pierce through him, aligning every unanswered prayer, every unresolved grief, with the same luminous pattern. And then the memory collapses inward, folding into a single point of blinding truth. A truth too large for comprehension. The entity's presence trembles. Its glow falters. There is one more revelation waiting, one it has held back until now. The being warns Eli, one final truth remains, and it is the most difficult to face. Reality buckles, and Eli is pulled into the moment he has avoided for years, the one memory he could never revisit without breaking. Yet this time he is not alone. The entity guides him through the transition between life and whatever lies beyond, showing Linda's final breath not as a collapse, but as an opening. The hospital room reappears with unnerving detail, the fluorescent hum, the faint beeping of machines, the cold antiseptic air. But beneath those familiar sensations, another layer emerges. A thread of light stretches from Linda's chest, shimmering with a softness Eli has never seen. As her final breath escapes, the thread unfurls, not downward, not into darkness, but upward into a field of brilliance that expands beyond dimension. Linda is not vanishing. She is returning. And in that return she understands more than Eli ever could. Her last expression, one he misread as surrender, was acknowledgement. A recognition of the pattern awaiting her. The entity shows her awareness dissolving into that luminous field, merging with ripples set in motion on Golgotha. She isn't lost. She is absorbed into a current older than galaxies, aware of Eli, aware of the life she lived, aware that her final words were not farewell but invitation. The truth hits with impossible weight. The silence he interpreted as abandonment had been something else entirely, an opening for a transition he could not yet comprehend. Eli feels his chest tighten as the vision fades. The barn materializes around him again, but the air has changed. The ship shudders. Dimensions flicker. Dust rises from the floor in sharp vertical lines. The vessel is awakening. Time is running out. The craft stirs violently, whatever happens next must happen now. The conduit reaches full resonance, flooding the barn with a radiant pulse that sears through the walls and out into the desert night. The structure of the ship disengages from reality in layers. First the shimmer along its edges, then the vibration that lifts every loose object a few inches off the floor. The barn groans, its beams bending under the strain of two worlds unstitching themselves. Eli steps back as the vessel tears free, rising without noise, without exhaust, without force. Just pure alignment. The ground beneath him trembles as light spills across the desert scrub, casting shadows that stretch for miles. For a moment, the barn becomes a cathedral of impossible geometry, illuminated by a light that feels both foreign and strangely familiar. The entity's presence touches Eli's mind one last time. Soft, warm, steady. Not a farewell. A completion. The connection dissolves, leaving behind an ache that feels like the end of a chapter he never expected to live. Above him, the ship ascends, its form bending the night sky into waves of shimmering distortion. It climbs higher, narrowing into a single point of brilliance suspended above the back 40. Just before it vanishes, a vision slips into Eli's consciousness, a flash of something he cannot interpret. A symbol. A location. A time. Unclear but deliberate. Then the light collapses inward, leaving the desert dark again. Silent. Forever changed. The entity's final vision burns in his mind, mysterious, urgent, utterly undeciphered. The desert morning arrives with stripped-down clarity. Government vehicles sweep the area, agents wading through dust and debris with instruments that hiss and crackle against the air. They find scorch marks that shouldn't be hot, magnetic fields that shouldn't be shifting, and a barn that looks half-collapsed from forces no storm could have produced. They question Eli, measure him, scan him, dismiss him. His answers are too simple for their complex fear. When they leave, the silence feels different, not empty but charged. Eli moves through his days with a strange calm he can't explain. His hands steady in a way they haven't in years. His breath deepens. Small things respond to him now. A dying plant straightens under his touch, a flickering light stabilizes when he enters the room, even the stray dog from the neighbor's ranch follows him with quiet recognition. He no longer argues with grief. He no longer fights the silence. He walks through life as if he carries a resonance the world forgot. Neighbors whisper about him at the diner. Some say he survived the lightning strike. Others insist he's hiding something. Eli doesn't correct them. The truth would unravel their sense of safety in ways he refuses to inflict. But one morning as he approaches the mailbox, something stops him cold. A symbol, the same one from the entity's final vision, has been burned into the metal. It wasn't there yesterday. The mark glows softly in the morning sun, waiting for him to understand its meaning. Eli steps forward not as a man seeking attention, but as someone carrying truth too heavy to keep buried. His story is not a confession. It is a warning. A map. A thread extending from the night, the sky split open to this moment in which he chooses to speak. He understands now that silence is a form of surrender, not to fear but to forgetting. And humanity is drifting toward a threshold where forgetting has become dangerous. The patterns he witnessed, the alignment he learned, the truth behind sacrifice and suffering, they were not meant for one man alone. They were meant for a world on the brink of losing sight of itself. His testimony is simple. Reality is deeper than anyone imagines, faith is wider than anyone teaches, and the divine is not a distant spectator but a force woven through every breath. He does not ask for belief. He asks for awareness, the readiness to see what has always been there. As he speaks, something shifts in the sky above the desert. The air grows still. The horizon brightens with a faint, familiar glow. A feeling rises through him, not fear, not hope, but recognition. Because once you've seen the patterns, you never stop noticing their return. Above the back 40, a pulse flashes across the night. Blue-white. Silent. Deliberate. The sky over New Mexico flickers with the same impossible light that started everything.